Hal, how you doing?
Hey, guys. Doing good.
You were there. You saw how Aaron handled the media. What were your first impressions on him?
Exactly. My first impressions when I met him and heard so much about him for the people that spent 8 hours interviewing him. Very, very calm, cool, collect, and confident.
Was it unanimous from all the people that you trust and that talked to him for those 8 hours? Was he the recommendation from every single one of them?
He virtually unanimous. I'll leave it at that. It was clear there was a difference of opinion amongst everybody there as to who their second and third choice would be. But yes, it was virtually unanimous who their first choice would be. And in some instances, he was their first choice by far, in their words. And these are guys I put a lot of trust in.
Now, it's interesting, Hal, because you had laid out, I think during the owners' meeting, that the plan was to have Brian and the staff interview people, and then 2 or 3 people would come down and talk to you and the family. But you guys felt that you didn't need that, right?
Well, it was such a strong recommendation. And when I get that strong of a recommendation from the type of people that were in that room, I just didn't see the need to go to step 2. I mean, it was clear that everybody was absolutely convinced, for the most part, that he was the right guy to lead this team into the future here. Any
trepidation whatsoever, Hal, with the fact that the team is so good and people are expecting him to do great things this year, to turn the keys over to a high-performance vehicle to a guy who's never driven before?
Well, again, as I said in the owners' meetings, that's certainly a concern, interviewing a candidate that had no managerial or coaching experience. But it was clear in talking to Aaron amongst everybody, it was even a pleasant surprise among some, his knowledge of the game. I mean, it was superb. And, look, this is a guy who grew up around baseball, grandfather, father. Obviously had his own career, so he's had a lot of wisdom imparted to him from a very young age, along the way. And I think it was evident.
It's pretty amazing, Hal. I mean, you grew up when your dad, bought the team, and the managers were changed a lot. And, the Yankees have had 2 managers in 22 years. I guess that as a guy who's, running this organization now, you like that stability. You think that's good for the team.
I do. And look, there's certain things, there's a certain point that it can get to where it's obvious to me that a change needs to be made or that a different direction needs to be moved in. But for the most part, I'm a patient guy, as you know me a long time. And struggling in any given season can be a number of factors. You can't always lay it directly on the lap of the manager. I mean, we've had a lot of injuries in years past, and, other things have occurred. But I just felt at this point in time, though, it was time to move in a different direction. As good a human being as Joe was, and as great as he represented this organization and as hard as he worked, I just felt it was time to move a different direction here with this young team.
Hal, what kind of space did Aaron Boone occupy in your mind over the years since he was a Yankee? How did you think of him when you heard his name?
Yeah, very intelligent. I mean, clearly I've watched a lot of his broadcasts, as we all have. Didn't know him personally until now. But we all hear things in the industry, and we hear things about different people that are involved in the industry and in broadcasting, and just never heard a bad thing about the guy. And, it's clear in listening to him during broadcast that he's very cerebral, and, the analytics is definitely a part of the way he thinks. And I think he kind of conveyed that in the press conference when he said that, sometimes he's in the broadcast and he's thinking like a manager, here and there, and you could kind of tell.
Do you have everyone has their specific memory, it seems like, of when he hit the home run against the Red Sox. What's your memory of that?
I was standing there with Colonel John Carney, who's I've known a long time, and my niece Elizabeth, and I kept hearing my niece Elizabeth yell, "It's over the fence! It's over the fence!" that was she was like, whatever she was, 12, 13 years old. So that was my memory. I was with family and friends.
Now, you said something at the owners' meeting, and we have not spoken since then. I just want to make sure that I understood. You said that if the Yankees won the World Series this year, that Girardi still would not have been brought back. And I was startled by that. So I'm asking you, how was the decision made even before, this season played out?
Well, again, I don't know if you were there or not.
No, I was not.
That interview. Yeah, it was a typical hypothetical question, and I simply said, look, this decision was not made over the course of days, weeks, or even months. I mean, Cash and I have had many, many conversations about this and a lot of other things for years. So, this just seemed like the logical time with a much different team, a much younger team, to move in a different direction. So what I said was, I believe that yes, I would have made it. Would it have been more difficult? I'm sure it would have been, but I believe that it still would have been what was right for the organization going forward, because this was based on a long time and a lot of things observed over the course of years.
Boy, that would have been tough. I mean, you're right. That would have been tough.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
We had Brian on yesterday, Hal, and he spoke about how he was in constant. Constant's too strong, but he had a lot of conversations with A-Rod about qualifications, what he would think would be a good manager for this team. And I marvel at that, how far this guy has come in his relationship with you, your family, and Brian. Were you on board with consulting A-Rod like that?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, as you know, A-Rod was involved even when he really didn't have to be last year. But going to instructional league, dealing with our young players, spring training, several games in New York. He was there, helped us a lot with Sanchez, as you know. So he's been involved, and we're going to let the holidays kind of take their course here, and I'm sure we'll be talking about what kind of future with the organization he might want. He's got a lot of other balls in play right now, obviously, and I know he's spending a lot of time with his family. But look, he did everything right. I truly believe he realized his mistakes, and he certainly paid for them. And it's time to move on. But he's a very intelligent guy, as you know, and he knows baseball. So he's a good source of opinion asking, for sure.
Hal, I know you love hypotheticals, so I'll throw this one at you.
Yeah.
J-Lo, A-Rod's girlfriend, tweeted out A-Rod should be Yankee manager. Would you have considered him if he had said to Brian, and Brian said he never said it to him, if he had said to Brian, I want to be part of the equation, would you have thought about that?
I absolutely would have considered that, and ultimately it'd be up to Cash who he wants to interview and who he doesn't. I did not get involved with that, nor would I. But that's not a request. That's not a request we ever got. Again, I would have the same concerns that I had with Aaron about lack of experience, and in addition to that, I would have some concerns about this is a guy you're bringing in that just played with most of these players, and all of a sudden he's no longer a peer. He's a manager. He's your boss, and how does that come into play, if at all? So I mean, there would have been considerations, but that was never a request that was made.
But if he requested that, your head would not have exploded and said, "What? A-Rod manager?" That would not have been your reaction.
My purpose here, as was Cash's, is to interview all of the best people that are available that we could get to come in, get interested, and if he had wanted to throw his hat in the ring, Cash and I would have talked about it. But in the end, it would have been Cash's decision whether or not to interview him or not.
I'm actually to step away for the manager job for 1 second. I'm curious, Hal, what your thoughts were. End of the summer, after the All-Star break, Aaron Judge is becoming this phenomenon that we're all so excited about. And he starts getting into that slump that got right to the little edge of, oh my gosh, did we jump the gun with this guy? Did you have any nerves about that? When Judge was struggling, how did you handle it or view that situation?
I did not, and I'm not just saying that, and I'll tell you why I did not, because of the individual. I mean, he's just a very, very humble, very hardworking, confident individual. And again, I go down to the clubhouse every homestand, and as I say to everybody, most of these guys are like that. They're positive, they're confident, even-keeled. I mean, you can't tell if they've lost 10 in a row or won 10 in a row, and that's a good quality, and kind of a surprising quality given the average age of the team. But I just wasn't worried about him. I mean, I just wasn't worried about him, and sure enough, he came out of it.
The old saying, we're talking with Hal Steinbrenner, Yankees managing general partner here on the Michael K. Show, is don't count your chickens before they hatch. And, everybody had Ohtani as a Yankee, and it didn't work out that way. And I've heard from so many people, Hal, in the game, that the Yankee presentation was so off the charts great that anybody would have signed with them after they saw that. Were you disappointed, and were you surprised that Ohtani said, I just don't want to play in a big city?
I was a bit disappointed. I mean, we put a lot of work the last year into scouting them, and as you said, the presentation we made, our scoreboard people, our sales and marketing people, all the Cash's people, put a lot of work into it, and it was phenomenal. Blew me away. So it was a bit disappointing, but it is what it is. Whether it's a large market, small market thing, whether it's an East Coast, West Coast thing, I guess we'll find out. But it wasn't meant to be, clearly.
What got me, though, and I wonder what your take is on this, Hal. I mean, New York's always the biggest city in the world. I mean, they knew that, so why were you even involved? Why'd they have you put in all that work if you never wanted to play on the East Coast in a big city?
Again, who knows what developments happened when, Michael? I mean, I just can't answer that. I've never even had a conversation with the agent. Obviously, Cash has.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't answer that. But I mean, who knows what information? Who knows what revelations on any given day? I don't know. I just can't answer that.
You think this team that is being put together, and it's obviously not finished yet, you have the manager, you're working on a coaching staff, you think this team has a chance to win a championship in 2018?
Well, I think at this point, a lot of people would agree we're a championship caliber team. Now, there's always injuries, getting through a season healthy, guys not doing as well one year as another year or better. But we're not quite where we need to be yet. I'm still a little bit concerned about the starting rotation, and that's something we're going to continue to look into and address. And obviously we've got time to do so and some resources to do so with. And that's exactly what we're going to do as we do every offseason.
You have interest in bringing back CeCe if the price is right?
I'm sure that Cash is going to sit down. Winter meetings are coming up. It'd probably be better to answer that question in a week or two.
Okay.
We don't even know where CeCe's head is at this point. So, I mean, I'm sure Cash is going to sit down with his agent during the winter meetings and get a better idea. Look, CeCe was a great Yankee and great leader in the clubhouse, but we've been so focused on managers, quite frankly, and now coaches, that we just haven't gotten into the roster much.
Are you still consistent with let's get under the threshold this year, reset, and then next year a different story?
Well, I definitely believe that we have the type of team, and not to mention the guys we have at AAA like Chance Adams and Torres that you're going to see this year at some point, if all goes well. I mean, we've got the kind of team. Yes, it's definitely a goal to get under the threshold. I haven't put enough thought into next year yet, Michael. I really haven't. I'm just going to go year by year. That's the way I am, as you know, and that's the way I will continue to be. But there's no doubt we have a championship caliber team, and we're not going to need a $250 million payroll to continue that, in my opinion, given the young talent that we finally have.
Before I let you go, I'm thinking, when we were talking about the A-Rod stuff, and I wonder if you ever consider stuff like this. I would think that your dad would have just loved the whole specter of Alex Rodriguez as a manager.
It's a good question. That's a good question. That's a good question, and unfortunately, I can't answer, and never will be able to. But he loved the marquee players, the great players, and Alex was a great player. I don't think anybody can deny that. So, but that's about as much as I can comment on that.
When your last name's Steinbrenner and you're a part of this organization, an important piece like you are, when this season ended, we were having the conversation with fans about what level of disappointment you're at, because it kind of was a surprise. How much did the end disappoint you, or how satisfied were you with where this team went?
Immediately following the end, I was very disappointed, not happy at all. That should be normal, I would think. But look, as you sit back and calmly reflect, I think we exceeded a lot of people's expectations, and there was so much to be proud of this year. The way the players stuck together, the way they were never out of it, 4 or 5 elimination games, whatever it was in the postseason. I mean, they're never out of a game, never out of a series. And for a team this young, to be that calm and confident, it's a pretty special thing. So a lot to be proud of. Not good enough. They know it. We know it. But next year is going to be different if all goes well.
All right, final thing before I let you go. This is you and your family's team. The stadium is where the team plays. Peter, who is one of my partners here on the radio, thinks that he should be allowed to sit in the Yes Network broadcast booth for an entire game. I say no. Essentially, it's your booth, Hal. What do you say?
Quietly with headphones, mind you, Hal. Quietly with headphones.
I'd say that's a no-go. You're not yes personnel only, Peter. It's yes personnel only. You're not a company man. You're not a company man.
But I entertain on the Yes Network for 4 hours a day.
But you're not a Yes employee. You're an ESPN employee. You're on the Yes simulcast. I'm sorry, Peter.
I don't know. Who knows, Peter? In the weeks to come, maybe I'll change my mind. But I gotta go on Michael's recommendation. If he's
Thank you, Michael.
No, then what am I supposed to do?
Right. So if you'd gone the other way, I'd be in there. Perfect.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Hal. I appreciate it.
That could be.
Hal, have a great holiday, and for what it's worth, I think you made a great choice as a manager. He's a good man.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.